After enduring social unrest, geopolitical tensions, and the COVID-19 pandemic, this Asian financial and shipping hub, long seen by many as in decline, has finally found an opportunity to stage a comeback. The action plan on green maritime fuel bunkering and a company incentive scheme unveiled about a half month ago is seen by the local shipping community as a step by the Hong Kong government in the right direction. But just a step. The ambition is much bigger, because behind it is not just a Hong Kong story, but a China story. Here, promoting renewables and ensuring energy security are closely intertwined. And its massive scale and cost advantage in this sector has led people to believe that the country will become the world's largest supplier of low-emission fuels, such as green methanol and ammonia. Hong Kong, a former British colony and currently the most outward-looking and free-trading part of Chinese territory, despite Beijing's tightening grip over the past decade, should become one of the most important export ports, or a trading hub, for these fuels to reach the world, some argue. In the words of Hong Kong Chamber of Shipping Chairman Hing Chao, the vision is to provide a Chinese solution to global maritime decarbonisation through Hong Kong. Can this vision succeed? What more does Hong Kong need to do, for example? Does it need to implement its own carbon pricing mechanism with neighboring Chinese ports, say those in the Hong Kong, Macau, Guangdong Greater Bay Area, or known as GBA, before the IMO middle-term measures roll out? More importantly, can China fulfill its ambition to become the world's factory for green fuels? What challenges need to be overcome? Also, will geopolitics, which is accelerating the reconfiguration of global trade and supply chains, and arguably also affecting the pace of global decarbonization, hinder the realization of this ambition?
First of all, there is a plan. I think that's a good sign, because this shows that the Hong Kong government is actively thinking about the issue of how to optimize Hong Kong's geographical position, which is very difficult, into a green bunkering port.
That's Hing Chao, chairman of Hong Kong Chamber of Shipping and the head of locally headquartered shipping group Hua Guang. He was commenting on the action plan on green maritime fuel bunkering published by the Hong Kong government on November 15, which outlined the strategies and targets to develop Hong Kong into a hub catering to demand for biodiesel, liquefied natural gas, green methanol, and even ammonia and hydrogen in longer term. To facilitate this goal, the government will set up a green marine fuel incentive scheme within 2025, including subsidies granted to bunkering firms, lower port dues and registration fees for vessels using cleaner fuels, and import tax exemptions for green methanol used for bunkering. One of the key targets is for Hong Kong to supply over 200,000 tons of cleaner fuels annually, including LNG and greener methanols for ocean-going vessels by 2030, where the port will conduct the first demonstration of LNG bunkering by end June next year. While Hing agrees with the government's multi-fuel approach, he and his organization outlined several achievable initiatives that could complement the government action plan, including conducting a demonstration of ship-to-ship methanol bunkering by 2025. The Hong Kong Chamber of Shipping and the French Classification Society BV recently held a forum on green methanol in Shenzhen, inviting experts from the energy, shipping, shipbuilding, and related sectors to promote exchange and collaboration between different stakeholders across the supply chain. But why methanol?
When we conducted the workshops in Shenzhen 2 weeks ago now, we had to focus because we only had half a day, and rather than having a very broad discussion that would cover all fuel options, we felt that maybe we should focus on something that is slightly more immediate. Ammonia and is on a lot of people's mind, however the engine's not ready. The reality is, uh, ammonia is probably at least 1 to 2 years further away from methanol, from a maturity, if you want. So if we take out ammonia, we felt that for seagoing ships, methanol probably is the only green fuel solution that can be applicable to all vessels. Even if ammonia is available, we have done price studies and realized that ammonia probably won't be able to be fitted on smaller ships because the relatively low energy intensity of the fuel. Methanol is much easier. So that's one of the reasons. Another reason is because in China, we have seen that over the last few years, 2 to 3 years, the government, policymakers, as well as potential fuel producers have focused more on methanol than ammonia. So for all sorts of reasons, to have a workshop in the Greater Bay Area inside China, we felt that probably supply chain is a bit more developed, and therefore we can have a more meaningful discussion on green methanol.
While advocates of ammonia certainly and definitely can't wait to speak up, China's enormous potential in greener methanol production is less disputed. According to predictions by the Methanol Institute, global capacities for renewable methanol, biomethanol, or e-methanol will increase from less than 1 million metric tons in 2024 to over 20 million metric tons in 2027, of which China accounts for more than half. At the forum in Shenzhen, one of the speakers, Kelly Zhou, China's market development director at Methanex, the world's largest methanol producer, asserted that China's green methanol market will definitely be the most competitive globally in future, both in output and pricing, given the country's strengths in renewables capacities and technology. If prices in China are unacceptable, then overseas ones will only be more expensive, she said. The Hong Kong University of Science and Technology's shipping decarbonisation project has recently proposed the government should aim for 300,000 tons of green methanol bunkering alone annually by 2030.
We know that the demand for green fuels is going to be there. Ships are being built, engines are being created and to be able to run on green propulsion. And it is clear that methanol is definitely one of them. I believe that from the green fuels, methanol and ammonia will be the leading ones. I think in the near future, methanol will be the biggest demand after LNG. It is not only the deep sea trades that are using methanol. There's also some regional trade vessels that are looking at going with methanol.
That's Roberto Janida, chairman of Hong Kong Liner Shipping Association. He is even more opportunistic about the outlook for China's production capacity of green fuels, not just methanol.
There's no other country that is going to be able to begin producing green fuel at the rate that China can. In the first 10 years, I would say China will have a mammoth share of the market. I've heard other people saying 75%, which I think is probably even conservative. And all of that will be produced in Inner Mongolia and Xinjiang province, places that don't have ports. So that cargo, that fuel will need to be exported to or railed or trucked to a port to be put on tankers to go to Singapore, to go to Australia, to go everywhere to US, Europe. And all of these places, they have these plans to use green fuel, even domestic landside uses. But where's that fuel coming from? China. So Hong Kong, being on the port, would have a great opportunity. So we've been saying this is something where we really should be on the forefront, one of the leaders in this regard.
Janida said Hong Kong has missed the boat on developing LNG bunkering, but cannot miss a second chance. The vision of him and his like-minded peers, including Chow, goes beyond just bunkering operations for green fuels.
Hong Kong's current bunkering demand is not that big. We're also not that small. We're among the top 10, still within the top 10, but compared to Singapore, we're 1/10 of what they do. But this is not going to remain at that status. We believe that with our proximity to China, the production, that we would have first choice when it comes to green fuels. That aside, Hong Kong is not currently that big of a bunkering hub. So assume that we maintain the same volume of bunkering that we do at the moment. If we translate that into green fuel, let's say by 2030 or so, that would be, we calculated it'd be somewhere around 300,000 tons to 750 tons. That's pretty, who knows where that. That's not that much. In terms of setting up a business model that is will attract the suppliers, the producers, the transportation, the barge operations, all of that storage, there's not that much money in just bunkering. But that's okay, because one of the things that we need to consider when it comes to green fuel is, how is this green fuel that is produced in China going to be spread around, shared with the rest of the world? At the moment, the world is looking for a trading hub where green fuel can be bought and sold as a commodity, as the stock market. China doesn't have the financial institutions, the system design that Hong Kong does, the rule of law that Hong Kong does, to be able to replace Hong Kong as an ideal option. It could be an option, but I think that Hong Kong has a much better option for being a trading hub than China. Hong Kong would also have a better opportunity than, let's say, Singapore, because of the proximity of the fuel. I think that Hong Kong actually would be one of the best suited places as a global trading hub for this fuel, these green fuels, if we can line all the stars, get the producers to discharge or transport the cargo, the green fuel to Hong Kong, get the tankers to Hong Kong. We have the capability of being this trading hub. If we have Hong Kong as a trading hub, that fuel will be within Hong Kong's proximity. Some of it could be in GBA ports. Storage obviously would be an issue. Where we store, Hong Kong can, at the moment, we have some fuel tanks that are empty, but there could be offshore options, but there would also be other options within the GBA area. But we could use this as a trading hub. We would have that fuel available, and that is a much bigger business proposition than just bunkering. If we have Hong Kong as a trading fuel center, that fuel being here, a ship comes and they need 1/10 of the bunkering service that Singapore provides at the moment, we have it. It's not that much, and the price would be quite competitive, probably more competitive than Singapore, because it doesn't require the tanker repositioning to Singapore. So I think that would actually be a business model that would attract enough business. There would be actually sufficient interest from the different stakeholders to be able to look at that.
But before this great vision can become a reality, one of the key prerequisites still hangs in the balance, namely demand, or at least demand from the shipping side. Where will it come from? Even if China can provide Hong Kong with an ample supply of green fuels at a price advantage, traditional bunker fuels will remain much cheaper for the foreseeable future. What measures can help shipping companies breach this price cap and incentivize them to pay the premiums for green fuels? In order to drive Hong Kong's and even China's ambitions for green fuels, Should this country also follow the lead of EU and implement its own regional carbon levy policy before the International Maritime Organization?
There's 100+ ships that have green fuel capability. They're not running green fuel. And the reason is because the price gap can't support it. The market cannot bear that price gap. So we need to find a way to narrow that price gap. And IMO recognizes this need, and they have a plan. They've already stated a number of times there's different options that they're looking at. One that I think is quite reasonable and attractive is this green balance mechanism, which basically provides an incentive for people that are using green, or if you look at it the other way around, a fee that is applied for people that are using fossil fuel. Whichever way you go, it's narrowing that price gap. Now, IMO is made up of 100+ countries, and they need to accommodate all of those countries, which means sometimes they have to go for the lowest common denominator. In Asia, we are the builders of these engines, these ships. We are the biggest market globally for maritime. This is a hub for where green fuel could be generated or will be generated. So I think that Asia actually has an ideal market environment to be able to be ahead of the IMO standards rather than going for the lowest common denominator. I think that we don't have to wait for them. We can actually be ahead of the curve. And I think that if the rest of Asia doesn't do it, I think that there would be enough volume if, for example, Hong Kong and some of the neighboring ports were to agree to join together on a program that narrows the price gap. I believe that we would be able to have a mechanism where we can have a fee on fossil or a discount for green fuel users that would be able to attract the business to this area.
Gionita's view echoed what's in the early proposal by the Hong Kong University of Science Technology to the government. However, Hing, as a ship owner, took a relatively conservative stance on this issue.
I think at this moment in time, it's very important to take reference from the impact of EU ETS as well as the coming fuel EU, because they are the first market movers, and I think there are probably lessons to be learned in any case. However, at this moment in time, as the world is expecting IMO to come up with new legislations within the next year, I think at this moment in time, it's probably not necessarily a good idea to start imposing regional regulations. Instead, I think probably we should have options in the back of my mind. If IMO does this, what should we do? If they don't do this, what are the other options we can take? So optionality and planning ahead, I think it's going to be very important. But I think at the same time, we're at a very critical moment and patience is required. So I would encourage the Hong Kong government not to jump the gun and not to release anything before MEPC 83. At the same time, if IMO fails to deliver, then I think we're probably going to find ourselves in a position where we'll have multiple regional regulations, and China may also respond. And in this framework, then Hong Kong will also respond.
Now, our third speaker, Dr. Sanjay Kutan, Chief Strategy Officer at the Singapore-based Global Center for Maritime Decarbonisation, doesn't think it's necessarily a bad idea at all. Kutan has worked in the energy industry for many years before shifting to the maritime decarbonisation arena. He represents an organization that is a non-profit funded by several large commodity and shipping groups, including BHP, BW Group, and Eastern Pacific Shipping. He believes it makes overall sense for Hong Kong to become a green fuel center, but also highlighted some additional challenges. First, green fuels produced in China, such as green methanol, must stand up to the life cycle analysis.
To make green methanol or biomethanol, you will need green hydrogen and biomass. right? So these are the two major components. And of course, China has a lot of green hydrogen potential because of its huge installation on renewables and probably excess installation compared to what the grid can take. Then the challenge is how do you, with the biomass that you get, there are a couple of pathways, and I think it depends on the chemistry and the ability to convert that biomass into a bio-based fuel, or do you then go and manufacture biomethanol, right? And I think someone needs to start thinking about the economics and the carbon footprint of taking either of these pathways, because the fuel, IMO's guideline around the fuel is around the life cycle analysis. So it's really from, traditionally we will say well to wake, but in terms of biofuels is more from plant to wake, so to say, right? And then does it really make sense from a carbon footprint perspective and an energy perspective to actually do that? And I think that's the big if factor that needs to be sorted out.
During a recent Green Fuel seminar in Hong Kong, Frank Yu, vice president of Shanghai-based Envision Energy, producer of green hydrogen and ammonia, e-methanol, as well as sustainable aviation fuel, said some Chinese biomethanol producers' products do not meet low-carbon standards because they take shortcuts in the production process. As a critical part of the production process, biomass feedstock, mainly straw, needs to be gasified to generate carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen. But out of cost considerations, the CO2 generated in this process that cannot be fully converted into methanol is directly emitted rather than recovered by adding more green hydrogen or using carbon capture devices, Yu said. Meanwhile, technological innovation and advances, which hopefully could solve the issue, may also create more effective cleaner fuels in future, thereby adding uncertainty to the outlook for current versions, Kutan said.
Our technological advances to create new types of fuel is improving at a pace over the last decade, much faster than you go back 10 decades ago or 5 decades ago, right? This whole idea of technology converting biomass efficiently into bio-based fuels might be a game changer, right? The opportunity of algae to grow, whether it's microalgae or macroalgae, to be grown at scale to produce bio-based fuels, right? And that could change the game already, right? So it's hard to say which way it will pan out, whether it's going to be equal market share, and things. It's hard to tell because of the pace of innovation that's happening on the supply side. But I think in reality, at least till 2050, because of the pace of engine makers able to get those engines at the yards and the pace of change of shipping in terms of, decommissioning and new builds, and, we've got 80,000 ships, we're building only about 3,000 or 4,000 a year. You know what I mean? That whole change will at least see fossil fuel around for a significant amount in 2050, right? So it depends on your timeline in the long term. You go down to 2100, there's a high chance that we will get used to either using ammonia as a toxic fuel. We would have a better economics on biomethanol that will make it even more suitable, or emergence of new bio sources that can leverage current infrastructure, and you don't have to invest too much more on the infrastructure.
For the lofty aspiration of green fuels in Hong Kong and China, there's also one more risk that cannot be ignored: geopolitics. Domestic suppliers have already worried whether China's products can gain acceptance from foreign, especially Western certifiers, with factors like trade wars and geopolitical tensions potentially affecting the pace, requirements, and outcome of the certification approvals, posing unpredictable business risks. Last week, the U.S. House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party raised further alarm bells. In a letter to the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, the committee accused Hong Kong of becoming a critical hub facilitating sanction evasion and illicit trade with Iran, Russia, and North Korea, and called for an investigation into the city's financial system. The Hong Kong's government responded with a statement describing the allegation as malicious slander lacking factual basis, calling them grossly unfounded. The event, nevertheless, underscored the complicated backdrop where geopolitics is taking on a growing importance in global trade and finance, and highlighted Hong Kong's struggle to maintain its role as an East-West superconnector and clashing superpowers.
I think, after the protest movement in Hong Kong in 2019, already Hong Kong relationship with US changed in a very fundamental way, and global perception of Hong Kong has also changed. I think people are coming around to see the fact that Hong Kong is still a very good place to do business, particularly for those who have come back to Hong Kong in the meantime. But I think what happened in 2020 gives us a hint of what the US might do to Hong Kong in an event of escalation of US-China tensions.
What Hing alluded to were the events in 2020 when Washington withdrew the special trade status it had granted Hong Kong, no longer treating it separately from mainland China. This occurred after Beijing implemented the national security law in Hong Kong to quell social unrest, which Western democracies saw as damaging the city's autonomy.
Hong Kong should also look ahead, and Hong Kong should also embrace the opportunity brought by the Belt and Road. So as China's trade relationships with Africa, with Central Asia, with Southeast Asia, all these countries continue to expand, and as we see that the economic growth globally will be driven mainly by Asia, I think there's a fantastic opportunity right there for Hong Kong to enhance our position as a financial center by welcoming more banks, not necessarily just from the Western Hemisphere as has been in the past, but could welcome new trade partners and welcome them to come to Hong Kong.
Giornita asserted that in the production of green fuels, the world and the West cannot simply circumvent China.
The reality is that no country can produce enough green fuel to meet the global demand. No country has the scalability that China has because of the natural environment of China, solar and wind energy and space and agricultural feedstock. So many reasons that China has a global advantage that will allow it to be in a dominant position for the next 20 years. There's no way around it. Other countries will, US, Europe, etc., will want to delink themselves from China dependency, but they won't be able to when it comes to green fuel production. There's not going to be an option. And the demand is already much higher than the availability. Price aside, there's not going to be enough supply availability to meet the global demand for maritime purposes alone, much less landside operations and requirements. So I don't see a way around avoiding China.
During the recent Hong Kong Maritime Week, a government policy advisor told Lloyd's List in private that he's deeply concerned about the increasing tense US-China rivalry and Hong Kong's dilemma caught in between. But he said, "Since I'm in Hong Kong, I must be optimistic about Hong Kong." This is Cichen Shen, the APEC editor of Lloyd's List. Thank you for listening.